Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Do More with Less, where we talk to the world's top marketing leaders, thinkers and practitioners to understand and share how individuals and teams best responding to the blunt instruction to do more with less. This week, I've got multi-award-winning LinkedIn and personal brand expert Shoaib Ahmed. Now, I met Shoaib, or rather saw him speak at an event, B2B Marketing Live in Manchester, only 2 weeks ago, and this guy blew my mind. So what does it mean to be LinkedIn and personal brand expert? Let me give you a few figures. He spent 5 years writing more than 20,000 posts, mastering what makes LinkedIn work for founders and creators and executives. The results, 475 PR opportunities generated, around 4,000 inbound leads, and a playbook that turns LinkedIn presence into powerful revenue channel. Now, if you think about doing more with less and paralleling that with how much we all grump about LinkedIn and how inaccessible, how impossible, how impenetrable it can be to get our message out, this guy's got 210 happy clients using LinkedIn to get results. He's created more than 300 million organic LinkedIn impressions and driven more than $15 million revenue straight through LinkedIn. Mr. Ahmed, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like that's such a great introduction. I feel I've got to live up to that now.
You do. And look, I'm going to hold you to the fire. You've got to go for it. Listen, I write all my own content on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just snobby and elitist about it. I'm paranoid about anybody else writing content for me because I suppose coming through journalism and also being from the same corner of the world as you, I kind of feel like I've got the confidence and the assurance that I know how to speak like me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're talking about building someone's LinkedIn presence for them, created by content they didn't write. So ghostwritten by you or anyone else. Is it difficult to be authentic in their name? Do you ever wrestle with that question?
It's a great point. It is tricky to capture someone's voice and sentiment. And obviously, if you've never met the person, 90% of my clients I've never met in person. But I'm able to capture their voice, tonality, perspective, POV through a very in-depth, like one-to-one collaborative process. I wouldn't say I write all the client's content. I'd say it very much is a brain dump from the client, whether that's a WhatsApp voice note, whether that's a podcast they've been on, and me essentially taking what already exists or what they've already said and packaging it into digestible content built for an algorithm that is going to help them move their business forward.
Hello, sorry to interrupt. Do More with Less is a podcast and a webinar and a set of events that's made possible entirely by marketing resource group Orbital X. If you would like to know how we credibly claim many millions of pounds worth of pipeline influenced by our marketing resource group support and up to 60% of your closed won deals, give us a call, half an hour with one of us. Really happy to talk to you and explain how that works and how it might look for your business. Thank you for allowing this interruption. Back to the podcast.
And so, let's get in a moment to the frustrations I think most execs experience when they try and wrestle with LinkedIn. First one being confidence. Do I have something to say? Second being, how does it work? When do I post? How many should I post a day? What formats work best? Bloody hell, has the algorithm just come and swatted me over the head again? You're an expert, so you can get into all that in a little moment. But let's just continue on what success looks like. So I know one of your clients, David Walsh at Limelight, the claim here is that they hit 3.2 million in investment and 90% of company ARR from LinkedIn. Now that's astonishing. So given that example, what does a content engine actually look like day to day? What does that, being, as well as the expertise of getting into somebody's head and verifying yourself as sounding like them when you need to, when it's not come straight from their podcast or their voice note, you're also an expert in engaging LinkedIn and grabbing LinkedIn viewers, the right ones, coming to your content. What does the engine look like for you?
Yeah, so we have like the science behind it, and then I guess the art of viral copywriting that bolts on. So the science behind it is thinking about your social selling funnel, right? So at the top of that funnel, you've got awareness content. So how do we capture a broad mass audience on LinkedIn? Not the specific token of your ICP, but actually the person who sat at their desk at a 9 to 5 scrolling through LinkedIn passively whilst having their lunch, right? How do you capture that person's attention, the everyday reader on LinkedIn? Because to perform on LinkedIn, you have to have broad enough appeal to grow audience. You can't just keep speaking to your ICP because nobody logs into LinkedIn to buy something from you.
Wait, that already is controversial in itself. What you just said, to most B2B startups, tech-driven, data-driven, saying to them that you have to target outside of your ICP is already quite a controversial assertion. Do you get pushback from that at all?
Absolutely. But then those people will target their ICP for 3 months and think, I've got no impressions. I'm getting 7 likes on my posts, and half of those are from my internal team, and the other half are existing clients. To grow beyond the kind of ordinary levels, you have to do something extraordinary, right? So we have to create content with the sole intention to capture mass audiences and go viral. What that virality does is it drives eyeballs to your profile. And that is the key thing, I would say. Is each individual post is not designed to convert customers. Each individual post is almost like a jigsaw piece in a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, right? So you're priming your reader to know who you are, to like you, first of all, because nobody's going to buy your service if they don't like you, or feel like they trust you, or feel like there's an element of relatability in that. So that's your first goal, especially if it's a new account posting on LinkedIn. Like, why would people care about the cybersecurity software that you're selling, right? So you've got to create a narrative, have a narrative arc, have a point of view, have a perspective, give people a reason to engage with you as the service provider over any other person in your industry.
And is it a narrative as me or as my company?
As you building that company. Right. So one of the key areas of content I talk about is building public content. So
what does building in public look like?
Yeah. So how are we documenting that journey in real time? So showcasing the growth of the company, where you started versus where you are today, creating almost underdog inspirational story arcs, right? That again, they have broad appeal. It doesn't matter if you're a founder or not. If somebody can see you've gone from here to here, and that's quite a stark contrast, that can create quite an inspiring kind of narrative transformation. So it's talking about your journey.
Are you talking bloopers reel? Are we talking outtakes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All of it. Success, milestones, failures, wins, losses, mistakes you've made, times you lost money, times you lost a client, all of it. Because
how do you articulate to somebody twice as old as you, from a different generation and a different contextual background, that blooper reels are worthy and not to be fake, but they are genuine, great content? How do you put to somebody who has grown up in the age of the press release, that putting something on that makes them look vulnerable or weak or mistaken or fallible is worthy of gaining somebody's trust in a corporate sense?
Absolutely. Right now, we live in an era where AI has lowered the barrier to entry for content, right? So anybody can create content and give advice and sound like an expert well enough to pass, right? Which means more and more people are posting on LinkedIn than ever before. But as more and more people use AI, all the posts are sounding the same. So right now, your biggest differentiator is bringing personality, point of view, storytelling, and building community. They're the 4 things that are really going to differentiate you from every other post on your newsfeed. And we live in an attention economy. So the best way to do that is the first 2 lines of your post. How are you saying something almost outlandish or unexpected or maybe slightly bizarre, people wouldn't expect to read on LinkedIn? How are you doing all of that in the first 2 lines of your post to actually get people to read more? I know founders who've spent hours and hours on posts playing about with particular words, with sentences, thinking, should I use this word or that word? And nobody's even reading the entire post because the first 2 lines are so boring, so generic, so vague of personality that they just scroll past. So that entire point of that post, well, there isn't one really, is there? So what I'd suggest is, how are we creating something that is distinctly memorable as ours, as mine, as my company, as my culture, as my story. That's the goal.
And David Walsh at Limelight obviously bought into this.
Yes, for sure. So he was building brand offline and had amazing success stories and all those milestones he was posting about on LinkedIn. Same with, hundreds more clients that I could name. But then what happened is the reply rate was abysmal. He was sending cold DMs, cold emails. No traction was happening. He was well trusted and well liked in his circle, in his offline circle, which was geographically bound. The minute we started sharing his story online, I think in the first week, he had a viral post, got 300,000 impressions, talking about the time he got fired from Indeed. And I think 7 years later, Indeed reached out to invest in his company. Now, that is an incredible story. Now, the way we created that hook, the first 2 lines, immediate transformation, it went viral. 300,000 eyeballs on your post roughly translates to about 5,000 profile clicks instantly. If you've got an optimized profile, that is the second stage of your funnel, right? You've got content at the top and then profile. All that traffic is filtering down on your profile. If your LinkedIn profile isn't optimized for your ICP, this is the part where we go a bit narrower in terms of who we're targeting. The right people who land on that profile are going to think, this is for me. I need this product. This person is clearly credible and great at what they do. They're signposted to an action, whether that's to book a meeting via Calendly, whether that's to book a demo, whether that's to visit an inquiry page on the website. That's how you funnel audience through to particular places. But you can't start a LinkedIn post saying, I'm selling this. Go check out our website, because it's going to be crickets.
You're a media person, aren't you?
Yeah.
LinkedIn has gone from being at its most brutally simple a repository for CVs to a media channel, and you are expert in telling stories and media. Like when you talked earlier about the LinkedIn lunch that people have at their desks, when I first started in marketing and advertising, that was a liquid lunch. The people talking about brand and storytelling would be, when I was a journalist at Marketing Week, when I was an editor at Marketing Week, they'd be taking me out and trying to get me drunk. But that liquid lunch has now become a LinkedIn lunch. So people are going to LinkedIn, as far as you're concerned now, or you know it because you're playing on it, not just to find great hires or news, but actually to be entertained.
Yes, 100%. I think we've got so lost in thinking LinkedIn has to be this educational platform, and you've got to provide value in your content, but value isn't confined to education. Value is also inspiration, empowerment, as well as education. It's also entertainment. I've had people reach back out to me 6 months after initially seeing a piece of my content saying, I remembered that post you did about this, and it's completely nothing to do with my current business or what I do, but they've remembered me as the person. So when they need that service, I'm the first name that comes to their mind. So it's almost about how do you occupy space in that person's mind long-term and create brand stickiness, is what I like to call it.
And where are you in your building of you and building of your company and building of your career? So I understand you just won another award for content this week. You've harnessed a number of gongs and prizes. Young Entrepreneur of the Year is obviously a big deal for someone so early in their career. You're building, but you describe your offer as only for a small client roster. You're trying to keep things deliberately small, whereas most agencies would be looking to scale. So more clients means more revenue. What are you doing here? Are you a consultant? Are you a business to grow? Are you resisting sort of that kind of scale because you need to keep a personal eye and presence on every client? What are you actually doing? Are you building for the future, or is this just what you're doing right now?
Great question. So I originally started
I'm asking on behalf of your parents, obviously.
They'd say, oh, he just sits in his bedroom on his laptop all day. So I originally started with the intention of building an agency hiring lots of people and becoming the go-to personal branding agency in the UK. And very quickly I started growing, and by month 4 or 5 I made my first hire. And I think within 2 or 3 months we were 10k revenue a month from zero. And then I hired, and we got to maybe 5 or 6 people in the team. And then I actually realized this isn't going to work for me as an individual. At the same time, I was going through figuring out my autism and ADHD and understanding like my brain and how I operate. And then I actually thought, what am I building for, right? I'm doing all of this stuff because that's the norm, right? That's the path that you should follow. I was doing all the productivity hacks. I was reading all the books. I was doing all the different ways to work 18 hours in 3 hours and all these little tricks and tips. And I actually realized it's not the life I wanted. So I scaled it all back. I burnt everything down. I forwarded my clients to all my competitors. I literally started at like zero again. And I rebuilt the entire business from scratch, knowing that my personal brand is something that I had, and that would just allow me to do whatever I wanted. Because once you've got audience and people invested in you and that trust you, you can almost pivot in any direction and those people will come along with you. So today, it's just me and my business. I work fully remotely. I've got total time and location freedom, and I intentionally work with 6 or less clients at any given point, because the nature of what I do, I have to have a really deep relationship with my client to understand what they're thinking almost before they're even thinking it, because I need to write as them and capture their voice, and also tell them when I think they're doing the wrong thing, when they're making the wrong media decision for them and their business. So to do that, I like to keep things tight and focus on quality over quantity. Now, saying all of that, I actually earn revenue-wise the same that I did with a team of 6 people and contractors and media partners, etc. But I'm doing it all alone. So I've basically built more efficient ways of working to allow more creative freedom within what I do.
Well, on a personal note, my 13-year-old son is both autistic and has ADHD, and I would in any given field be delighted if he was as aware and as driven. So well done, and I think it's brilliant. I wonder, you've been quite outspoken about ghostwriters who poorly use AI. I'm a writer. I know when I'm having a great day, and it pours out of me. I also know, by the way, I'm kind of experienced enough to know when there's a blocker, or when I'm not feeling it, or when I just don't have the right amount of time or space to do what needs to be done. So I'll move on to something more mechanical or more regimented, or some admin or something else that needs to be done before going back to it. Where's the line for you? Because obviously 6 clients enables you to write as your clients. But to an outsider, ghostwriting and AI-generated content might look the same. And I think everyone can see AI slop now. I think everyone notices it. Where's the line for you? Like, what's a good use of AI compared to a poor use of AI?
Mm-hmm. So I think before we even consider AI, there's a work that needs to be done beforehand, which is really understanding like the story and the narrative behind that individual, right? Because AI can only create output based on what you feed it. So a lot of people have come to me and said, I've been using AI for years. Here's my content. It's very bland. It lacks specificity. There's no story, emotion, personality. And it's just because it's more commentary on their industry, or they're trying to educate people. But no one, like I said, no one's looking for that anymore. So the first thing I would do with a client is actually sit with them and do an informal interview for about 2 hours, where we just sit and I ask them one question, and it's tell me about your life. And they lead that conversation, and they automatically will start talking about where they grew up, how it started, what their career ambition was, their first job, how much they got paid, that time they got fired, the great boss they had, the terrible manager they have. Now that's 2 hours worth of transcript that I could probably produce around 60 LinkedIn posts for. And I probably would say there's at least 5 to 10 viral posts in there. Every single client I've worked with has had a viral moment, but they would never themselves see that from their own point of view, because what's interesting to other people might not be interesting to them.
So is it scalable? As in, somebody talks to you for a couple of hours, you can see 60 odd posts, 5 of them viral. Is it scalable, or is there sometimes where you're sitting there going, this guy's got literally nothing?
I've never hit that point. The reason why I don't think I've hit that point is because I've been on LinkedIn so long, and I've got access to, over 20,000 posts that I've written. I could take one story and do that in 20, 30 different ways because I've seen the types of templates and formats that perform. So whether it's a tweaking of the hook, whether it's taking this format that I know worked with this client in recruitment, but taking a SaaS client and embedding their story in that post framework, there are trends and patterns that show certain things just work. And it just comes back to human psychology of how you prime a reader for an amazing story. There's 8 viral copywriting techniques that I coach my private clients on. And if you put those core ingredients in your content, it's just way more likely to perform better. Once you know all these building blocks, you can almost scaffold your own viral content engine. But it's knowing what those ingredients are. And without that, you usually just playing a bit of guesswork, like, ooh, I think this is interesting. Oh, and it did okay, so I'll try to emulate that again. But if you don't know what in that piece of content is actually doing and working the magic, you can't replicate it at scale.
So how much, I don't expect you to give away your secret sauce here, but how much of it is based on frequency and time of day, as opposed to let's say templates and types of posts? So this one used video, this one's used questions, this one was spaced out in the right way. How much science of LinkedIn is going through your head when you are producing the next piece?
Mm-hmm. I'd say if we're looking at a hierarchy, the most important thing is the actual story and the way that message is shared, purely in terms of the copywriting and how I've packaged that message in a readable format. Then I would say it's the structure and format of that piece of content, the way you've paired an image to a text-based post, or the way you've used a carousel with some text. And right at the bottom, which is the most irrelevant, is the time of day you post. I've had clients where I've accidentally scheduled something at 8 p.m. when it should have been 8 a.m. and the 8 p.m. post has gone viral. I've accidentally, scheduled posts at all times of the day. If it's a great post, it's going to perform well because someone, somewhere in the world, a human's on the other side reading that piece of content. And if it's a great piece of content, they're going to engage with it regardless of when it's posted.
And so LinkedIn for you genuinely is a fairly powerful revenue generating engine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the content is just one piece of it. I think a lot of people come to me and say, I've been posting 5 times a week and nothing's happening. And then I look at their profile and it doesn't even say what they do or how they service anybody. So all that traffic is just dissipating as soon as it lands on the profile. So you've almost got to think of this as a continual funnel. How does the content move? How do the eyeballs turn into traffic? How does that traffic turn into a follow or connection request? How do you drive that traffic to a landing page or a website? And at what point does that person convert? In the same way with a website, you'd have the buyer's journey. You do the same on LinkedIn. So rather than treating LinkedIn as a content platform or a hiring platform, I think today it's one component within your wider marketing funnel, but it sits at the top of that funnel because you have access to essentially unlimited people to bring into your funnel. It way outpasses the number of people you can reach at a particular networking event. Or if I was to speak on stage, for example, I spoke to maybe 250 people last week. The post I did about that got, I think, 27,000 impressions, and I've booked 2 more speaking gigs off the back of that post. Now, I did that with the content that I disseminated, which is essentially me building in public, right? That the impact of that one post with the pictures of me on stage far outweighed the impact I made in that room in terms of actual business.
And your how much of the LinkedIn science includes something a former guest on this pod talked to us about, Luann Wise, talked to us about actually treating each engagement, each comment and each like as a potential sale in itself, but only if you follow up, only if you go dark social, only if you message back. You seemed, when I hit you up on LinkedIn, you seemed very, very quick and committed to replying back, being quite personable, being quite informal, and mirroring my approach to you. Is that something that has to play into this funnel?
Absolutely, yeah. I think a lot of people have stayed away from the DMs because they feel like, it's a bit icky to directly message somebody because it comes across salesy. Whereas my goal is always to respond to buyer signals, right? So if somebody views my profile, follows me, sends me an invite connection request, or engages with my content, that is that person telling me that there's something that I've said that has resonated with them. So I reply with a very simple, warm DM. Hey, so-and-so, saw you like my post, saw you check out my profile. How's things? What was the reason? Like, did you enjoy a post, or are you looking for help with your personal brand? A very natural way to start a conversation. Within kind of 2 minutes, I can clock whether somebody's wanting help or support, or just somebody who's liked something I've said and just passively engaged with it. That is something that I think is really, really important. I would say 50% of my clients I sign that way, just through responding to something that's come to me. It's never even a cold DM because they know me before. Also, my reply rate is really, really high, and my conversion rate in DMs is really high. I maybe take 2 sales calls a month because most clients I just sign in the DM. And the reason for that is we've done all that sales process through my content. They've spent 6 months reading what I do, seeing case studies, seeing me on stage, seeing videos of me speak. They feel like they know me. So it actually speeds up the entire sales process, I would say. And the DM is just that final component of here's the details, book on here, and let's get going.
You're an incredible person. Honestly, you've got this finely tuned. You've thought about everything. You sound like an incredible salesperson, but without losing the personal edge. Now, leads on to the last question for me, Shoaib, is if somebody's watching this right now and is willing to take on everything you've said and is even willing to employ you for some training so that they can get good at this, rather than you doing it for them, the training the provision that you deliver. But their problem is this: they're saying, Shoaib, I get the stages and the work and the building blocks, but I'm not you. I'm not somebody who can easily, comfortably put themselves on show, stand on a conference stage, build in public. I don't like how I look, how I come across. I don't sound as confident and as easygoing as you. I'm actually quite shy or introvert or a bit of I know how I come across, and it isn't. How do they start engaging with LinkedIn? Because clearly you're somebody who can go into a room of strangers and almost instantly make friends with them. I watched it happen. I said to you when we met, when you first came on stage and I saw that you were a LinkedIn personal brand expert, I was in the room with 200 people and I was like, yeah, I've got work to do. I'm on my laptop. And the moment you start speaking, I was shut the laptop. Well, who is this guy? Clearly, you know how to hold an audience. What about those LinkedIn wannabes that can see the path to making it a revenue channel, but don't feel like they've got what you've got in terms of charisma or warmth or likability?
Okay, so the immediate first thing I'd say is the lowest friction activity you can do is start commenting and engaging on other people's content. So if you see something you like, don't just let it occupy your brain. Add a comment to that post. It could be a few words, anything to just start putting your name out there and sharing a little bit of a perspective, or even just, if someone's done a great post, letting them know, right? That could turn into a conversation in the DM, for example. That could turn into somebody seeing your comment and clicking onto your profile and then visiting your website. That's the lowest step. But beyond that, you don't need to put video on LinkedIn. I rarely put video on LinkedIn. For the first year of my business, I never spoke on a stage. I never did anything video-based. I never did a webinar or anything like that. It was purely text-based posts of me sharing my opinion or insight or perspective. Now, you do that regardless, right? Everybody has an opinion and perspective on what they do, their industry, workplace culture, leadership, etc. So if you can package some of that, using frameworks that will increase your chances of performing well on LinkedIn, that will give you enough confidence to keep on posting. The problem is when you start sharing stuff on LinkedIn, already feeling a little bit insecure, and then you get no traffic or no engagement, and you feel like, ooh, maybe I've said something wrong, or maybe I just don't have the personality for this, or maybe actually my story's not that interesting. That is very, very rarely the case. It's usually because you haven't almost played the game well enough to have the impact that you want to have. Usually, I've worked with introverts who've said, I don't have an interesting story, so I'm not going to be like this LinkedIn celebrity. And then they write a post and the first one goes viral. And then they message me like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, I've had so many lovely DMs and this has happened. And then they get really invested in it. And it's almost like once that first domino falls and you have that breakthrough moment, then all the dominoes fall, and then you get actually really excited about it. So the first step is actually knowing how to play the game before you throw yourself into it.
Shoaib, it's been an absolute pleasure from the moment I met you in Manchester to the call we had and right up until today. I've really enjoyed your presence and you've got a viral personality I love, but I think your business is superb. And so thank you for coming on, and please do keep in touch.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.